Firstly, I would like to start by congratulating Mr. Carnegie on his extreme success in the American steel industry, and extend my remarks towards Mr. Rockefeller with the Standard Oil Company, Mr. Vanderbilt with his success in the railroad industry, and J.P. Morgan's recent mergers and purchases that formed the United States Steel Corporation. We have entered what some historians call our second industrial revolution, or the Gilded Age, where American business is thriving more than ever. Former President McKinley pushed protective tariffs for American businesses against foreign ones, which led, in part, to our rapid economic growth. We are witnessing the height of the American dream, where an individual can achieve as much as he wants, and yet we see the cautionary tale in the giant who squashes the chances of others to compete. Here, President Roosevelt has championed the 3 C's of his square deal. Protect all people from corrupt, illegal practices. We want competition to thrive, with legislation like Sherman Antitrust Act. This is the age of great growth, social activism, and political reform of progressivism. But, unfortunately, with all good, there are evils that accompany our success. An important literary figure of our time, Upton Sinclair, in his novel The Jungle, expands on the horrific living and working conditions extremely large companies create for the middle and lower classes. Sinclair's lead characters, Jurgis Rudkis and Anna Likozowskite, immigrate to Chicago in the early 1900s. They could become absorbed by the lower working class who endure these dangerous and awful conditions. And I quote, "All day the long blazing midsummer sun, tens of thousands of cattle crowded into pens whose wooden floors stink and steamed contagion. Passages that defied a breath of fresh air, rivers of hot blood and carloads of moist flesh that smelt like the craters of hell. There were also tons of garbage festering in the sun, and dining rooms littered with food and black flies, and toilet rooms that were open sewers. My fellow countrymen, who came to seek the opportunities that stories had promised, many of you are deceived. Instead of kindness and assistance, you are greeted by greed that exploits your ignorance. You face alone the same sickness and cold and hunger and discouragement and the filthiness of his work and the vermin in his home that Jurgis faces. Sinclair gives us the window into your strife, into the fact that large industries such as meatpacking do not acknowledge that we are all created in God's image, no matter how rich or poor we are. Since big industries are not limited by our capitalistic government, workers like characters in The Jungle are cheated by people who have more money and power. For example, Maria is cheated out of her paycheck, and when she complains about it, she gets fired. Ona is raped by her boss, but when Jurgis confronts him, Jurgis is arrested. Like Jurgis, your dreams of being clean and decent, of witnessing your children grow up to be strong, die between insufficient wages and unfairly high rents and bills. Like Jurgis, you feel that you have played the game and lost. Like Russian peasants, people have become enslaved to their rents and jobs. The bottom line is that lower classes came to America to seek opportunity, to become successful, and in conclusion, the people who have more money cheat them and treat them like they're not even human beings. So, how do we help you? How do we help the stranger, our neighborhood, to uplift him when he has lost the game? We gather to look into the question, sacred charity. Who deserves our support, and what should we give them? First, let us understand how Judaism perceives charity. In Judaism, tzedakah is a mitzvah. I will explain these terms. A mitzvah is a religious imperative, an obligation that involves more than just virtue or altruism. Jews believe that mitzvot are pure common sense of living. And tzedakah. Tzedakah is the fulfillment of one's obligation. What is the obligation? The obligation is to help fellow human beings who are unable to meet their own needs. All human beings have the right to a decent life. We see this as a matter of justice and ethics. Deuteronomy 15 commands us to not ignore the needy. We are not allowed to harden our hearts and shut our hands, even to someone who is a stranger. Leviticus instructs us that if your brother becomes destitute, you should support him so that he can live with you. This reminds me of our settlement houses here in the United States, where the objective is to equalize and seal the gap between the rich and the poor. Although, unfortunately, in the United States, the conditions of these houses have become unacceptable. The Hull House in Chicago followed the Torah, that everybody is made in God's image, and followed the American dream that everybody deserves to be successful, even women. Like the Hull House, Judaism believes that everybody deserves the same opportunities, despite our birth parents' socioeconomic status. We see it as a sin to ignore any basic needs for being healthy and being able to hold up a basic lifestyle. And the questions for Jews, and really all of us, is not whether to give, but how to give and how much to give. First of all, when dealing with need, we are speaking of universal needs. For example, the right to eat, the right to have a roof over your head, clothes, basic sanitation, the opportunity to health care. Deuteronomy 15:8 states that we should fill the lack that he feels, though we are not obligated to enrich him, to give beyond the average Joe's universal needs. In other words, it's not what Mr. Carnegie thinks that Joe needs. It's what Joe feels that he needs. Within the scope of his universal needs, Joe should be empowered, because it is extremely diminishing to reach your hand out and ask for money. And the rich people should recognize that, and in every case not make a poor feel underestimated or disrespected. In fact, Rabbi Abba tied coins in his scarf and cast the scarf behind him, so the poor could take money without feeling embarrassed because they could not see each other's face. Halakha 15 states, "Woe unto him who shames the poor." But caution to you wage workers. We are offering a great opportunity to give what you need. However, people who take advantage of this system ruin the trust of philanthropists who feel their money is going to thieves. Talmud 67a agrees with me when it says, "Swindlers who pretend to be poor provide those who withhold charity with a rationalization for their callous behavior." All of us need to be ethical. All of us need to be unselfish and think about the people who actually need help. On one hand, Halakha 14 states that we shouldn't force a person to sell his belongings when he has lost his job. But on the other hand, Halakha 18 states that we should not make ourselves a burden to the community. So when asking, it is our duty to create a realistic balance between the true needs and the true wants. Thus, you gentlemen here who represent the success of our country at your collective over 200 billion net worth, imagine what you can do with that money. Sacred charity. Who deserves our support, and what should we do? Those who ask shall receive, and those who are abnormally rich should give. We must provide for universal needs, whether through better wages that truly allow people to thrive, or through charity. However, Mr. Carnegie has a point when he says that charity should be administered by people who know how to handle money. I couldn't agree more. In Judaism, we have the kuppah. The kuppah are appointed, renowned men who become trustees of our tzedakah. They take from each person what is appropriate for him to give, and then allocate them the funds. I propose that we form an organized and highly regulated charity, calling upon the wisdom of our philanthropists present and use them as our appointed trustees. Although Judaism relies on an honor system, Judaism should be modified to accommodate our modern age. So I believe that we should incorporate strict regulations. And just as my great old friend President Lincoln ended his second inaugurational speech, we extend across the social classes with the words, "With malice towards none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right. Let us strive on to make all men and women feel like human beings, for the equal opportunities succeed in this country. תודה רבה.